Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Sunday, December 21st, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. Tomorrow's forecast for Riverside looks mild, with a high of 73.9 degrees and a low dipping to 59.6, so plan your outdoor activities accordingly. Coming up on today's show, we'll break down the reasons behind TikTok's decision to sell its U.S. operations to a consortium led by Oracle, examining the implications for social media and data privacy. We'll also explore how President Trump's proposal to dismantle the National Center for Atmospheric Research could severely impact America's ability to forecast wildfires and severe storms, putting communities at greater risk. Plus, we'll cover other key developments in tech, politics, and beyond. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Big news for TikTok's future in the US this week. Ethan, help us unpack what changed and why it matters.
3 days ago, on Thursday, December 18th, ByteDance signed a binding deal to sell TikTok's U.S. operations to a group led by Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison. Outlets from PBS NewsHour to the Associated Press say it creates a new company, TikTok USDS Joint Venture LLC, to run everything stateside. It heads off a looming nationwide ban and tries to satisfy both American security demands and China's export controls.
So who's actually in charge under this new setup?
According to Bloomberg and Reuters, Oracle's consortium takes the lead, with Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-backed MGX each at roughly 15%, adding up to 45%. The Wall Street Journal reports existing international ByteDance investors hold just over 30%. ByteDance itself keeps 19.9%, and about 5% goes to smaller backers. That keeps ByteDance under the legal line for foreign adversary control while giving American investors majority sway.
When would this officially close? And what's the clock look like today?
The target closing date is January 22, 2026, which is about 1 month from today. That timeline lines up with the divestiture ban deadline in the 2024 Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act, often called PAFACA. The Guardian and NPR frame it as a race to meet that law without breaking Chinese export rules.
Why is Oracle so central to all of this?
Oracle is the trusted technology partner, a role it already previewed in Project Texas, and it will hold all U.S. TikTok data on American soil. The White House fact sheet from September 25, 2025, says Oracle will oversee the recommendation algorithm and audit code for backdoors. As the Washington Post notes, this doesn't transfer ByteDance's source code outright because of China's export controls, but it licenses a copy that's retrained purely on U.S. data.
Retrained algorithms sound technical. What does that really mean for users?
In plain terms, the software that decides what you see will be retaught using only American user data, and Oracle will watch for any hidden connections back to China. The Associated Press quoted Vice President J.D. Vance saying it will be, quote, fully American operated, end quote, though skeptics question whether a license can truly sever ties. For users, the goal is less foreign influence and more domestic oversight of how the For You page behaves.
Who's minding the store on governance and content decisions?
A 7-member board will run the U.S. entity, with 4 or 5 seats held by U.S. citizens, according to CBS News and The Post. They'll set moderation and recommendation policies domestically and have direct reporting lines to national security officials, including CFI US. TikTok's CEO Shouzi Chu stays through the transition but will answer to that new board on U.S. matters per his December 18th memo.
This seems tangled up in politics too. How did the Trump White House shape it?
It's the culmination of a years-long push that started in 2020 when then-President Trump first floated U.S. ownership of TikTok. The Supreme Court upheld PAFACA back on January 17th of this year in TikTok versus Garland, so the legal foundation was firm, and NPR notes Trump personally brokered aspects of the arrangement this fall. Bloomberg also points out Oracle's board features conservative heavyweights like Rupert Murdoch and Michael Dell, fueling perceptions of political alignment.
There's talk of a treasury fee. What's that about?
Several outlets, including the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, say the investors will pay a multi-billion-dollar fee, somewhere between $2 and $5 billion, to the U.S. Treasury as a condition of approval. But as of today, there's no public CFI-US agreement, no SEC 8K from Oracle, and no executive order text that confirms the amount or mechanism. Analysts at Lawfare and CSIS argue there's no statutory authority for a government success fee in CFI-US reviews, raising questions about legality.
So could that fee face a legal challenge?
Very likely. The Cato Institute and other legal scholars have called it unprecedented and potentially unconstitutional, pointing to the Fifth Amendment's takings clause and Congress's power of the purse. The Guardian and Common Dreams compare it to the abandoned 2020 idea of taking a cut from TikTok, which critics then called governing by shakedown.
What are lawmakers saying beyond the fee?
Senator Elizabeth Warren has been scathing, telling followers that this enables a billionaire takeover by Trump's billionaire buddies, with Larry Ellison at the center. The Washington Post reports she's tying this to broader media consolidation, noting Larry's son David Ellison is pursuing Warner Brothers Discovery after acquiring Paramount. She says that puts social media and legacy news under one family's influence, which AP News quotes as a danger to democracy.
Are Republicans raising concerns too?
Some are. Representative John Molinar, who chairs the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, told PBS he wants clarity on whether a licensed algorithm meets PAFACA's complete divestiture standard. Senator Ed Markey, a Democrat, is also seeking briefings on potential political bias in the retrained algorithm, according to WGCU Public Media, showing bipartisan appetite for continued scrutiny.
How are advocacy groups reacting?
The Council on American Islamic Relations warned Congress, in a letter cited by The Guardian, that new owners with strong political agendas could curb speech about U.S. foreign policy. Privacy and civil liberties groups are also pressing for transparency around content moderation and data sharing commitments. The message is that security fixes shouldn't become a backdoor for political censorship.
This announcement dropped just before the TikTok Awards. What was the mood there?
Variety's coverage says the red carpet was buzzing with nervous energy. On stage, it was glitzy, but backstage, creators worried the platform's free-spirited ethos could get squeezed under new ownership. Some felt relief about avoiding a ban, but many said the real test will be whether the algorithm stays fair and the rules stay clear.
What did creators actually say about censorship and the algorithm?
Singer Ray Ami told Variety, quote, "I hope TikTok remains firm in its pledge not to censor their creators. Censorship goes against what America's founding principles are," end quote. Merrick Hanna fretted about For You page manipulation, while Yasmin Saeed and Gloria George emphasized transparency and fairness. Markel Washington called the current algorithm mentally draining and wants a return to its original feel.
Were there bright spots for creator success stories?
Definitely. Keith Lee won Creator of the Year and credited TikTok with spotlighting minority-owned restaurants, which Variety highlighted as a powerful example of economic impact. Other winners included Bretman Rock, Alex Warren, Paris Hilton, and Elizabeth Esparza, and Canadian influencer Josh Richards praised the app's role in small business growth and young creators' livelihoods.
Let's talk Larry Ellison's vision. How does his track record fit here?
Fortune revisited comments he's made about AI-driven surveillance, including a vision of ever-present cameras and analytics shaping behavior. Those remarks now carry weight because Oracle will guard TikTok's data and check its code, raising questions about how aggressive the company will be in monitoring misuse. At the same time, Oracle's cloud and AI push is surging, with Fortune noting a massive multi-year OpenAI deal and partnerships like SoftBank's Stargate data center plan.
Does that AI muscle change TikTok's technical path?
It likely makes the retraining and auditing more feasible at scale, especially if Oracle can throw serious compute at the problem. But as the Washington Post points out, technical capability doesn't automatically quiet concerns about influence, especially if policy calls remain politically charged. The real measure will be whether Oracle can demonstrate verifiable independence from ByteDance while maintaining content diversity.
What's the status of government approval right now?
CFIUS still needs to sign off, and that could invite more conditions or side agreements. CBC News and the Irish Examiner say to expect ongoing friction between Washington's demands and Beijing's red lines on tech exports. Android Central adds that even with approval, courtroom challenges could surface over the fee and the definition of complete divestiture.
How does the Supreme Court ruling earlier this year factor in?
It's foundational. By upholding PAFACA on January 17th, the court narrowed TikTok's room to fight a forced sale under U.S. law, which sped negotiations this fall. Lawfare notes that ruling gave the administration confidence to press for divestiture terms, while insulating itself from immediate constitutional challenges to the law itself.
For everyday users, will anything feel different in the near term?
Not overnight. The company says the app stays live, and the U.S. board will phase in policy and algorithm changes as the retraining progresses. According to CNBC, Project Texas already migrated most American data to Oracle's cloud, so the most visible shifts may be in transparency reports and how appeals and moderation are documented.
And for creators whose income depends on TikTok?
They're watching the recommendation system like hawks, because small tweaks can swing views and revenue. Variety's reporting shows a split. Some hope American oversight rebuilds trust, others fear corporate caution will throttle edgy or political content. Keith Lee's win underscores how vital the platform is for local businesses and marginalized voices, so stability will be the creator community's top ask.
What's the biggest unresolved question heading into next month?
Whether licensing the algorithm and retraining it fully satisfies PAFACA's complete divestiture standard, or if regulators demand deeper code separation. The second big unknown is the Treasury fee. Is it real? What's the number? And can it survive legal scrutiny? The answers will shape not just TikTok, but how America handles future deals involving Chinese-linked apps.
Could this become a template for other foreign tech platforms?
Potentially, CSIS analysts argue that if Oracle's model works, domestic data storage, domestic governance, and licensed but audited code, Washington might push similar structures for other apps seen as high risk. But Cato warns the fee controversy, if mishandled, could backfire and chill investment because companies will fear government-imposed tolls.
What's ByteDance's role now that it's a minority holder?
It becomes a passive investor under the terms described by Chu's internal memo, with no control over U.S. moderation or data practices. Reuters says the licensing deal is the bridge. ByteDance provides the code copy, but Oracle controls the environment and oversight. If CFIUS insists, even minor influence channels could get tightened before closing.
And if the deal slips past January 22?
The administration has authority to enforce the ban under PAFACA, but NPR notes there's political will to avoid whiplash for 170 million U.S. users. More likely, negotiators would announce an extension paired with additional safeguards. The pressure point is credibility. Regulators won't want the deadline to look hollow.
Final thought, Ethan. What should viewers watch for as this moves ahead?
Look for 3 signals. First, a public CFIUS mitigation agreement that spells out data walls, audit rights, and board oversight in plain English. Second, any congressional hearings on the fee in early 2026, which the Standard in Hong Kong and Investing.com say are already being planned. And third, creator-facing transparency reports that show how the retrained algorithm ranks content, because that's where trust will be won or lost.
Ethan, thanks for breaking it down. We'll keep tracking the approval process and what it means for your For You page in the weeks ahead. Good morning. A major shakeup in weather and climate science is sparking outrage. The White House says it plans to dismantle NCAR in Boulder. Our reporter Chloe is here to explain what that means. Chloe, how big a deal is this?
It's massive. NCAR is the National Center for Atmospheric Research, a federally funded hub in Boulder that many scientists call the world's mothership for weather and climate research. It supports roughly 830 staff and provides supercomputers, research aircraft, and modeling tools used by forecasters and emergency managers across the country. As the Colorado Sun and Inside Climate News report, it's operated by UCAR, a nonprofit consortium of more than 130 universities under a National Science Foundation agreement.
So what exactly did the administration announce?
5 days ago, on December 16, the White House Budget Director, Russell Vought, posted on X that NSF would break up NCAR. He called the center, quote, one of the largest sources of climate alarmism in the country, end quote, and said the goal was to refocus on weather while cutting so-called woke programs. According to CalMatters and the Colorado Sun, the plan includes divesting the Wyoming Supercomputing Center and reassigning NCAR's 2 research aircraft, a Gulfstream 5 called HIAPER and a C-130.
Did NSF confirm that?
Yes, the next day, 4 days ago, NSF issued an official statement on its website titled, Intent to Restructure Critical Weather Science Infrastructure. NSF said it sent UCAR a letter of intent seeking options to divest certain assets and would soon issue a Dear Colleague letter to get community feedback. But the Washington Post notes there's no public timeline, no Federal Register notice, and, as HPC Wire points out, no contract termination posted on sam.gov as of today.
What's the administration trying to cut within NCAR?
Vaught's post singled out the Rising Voices Center for Indigenous and Earth Sciences, which blends indigenous knowledge with atmospheric research. Politico Pro reported White House officials also derided studies on offshore wind, air pollution tied to oil and gas, and renewable energy modeling as part of the, quote, Green New Scam, end quote. But as NPR's coverage makes clear, those programs feed into public safety, from air quality alerts to grid reliability during heat waves.
Can they really split weather and climate like that?
Scientists say that's not feasible. Weather and climate share the same physics and data pipelines, and NCAR's integrated models handle both, from hourly forecasts to seasonal wildfire outlooks. UCAR's president, Antonio Busalaki, has warned, in statements covered by Boulder Reporting Lab, that carving out climate work would cripple the very weather predictions the administration says it values. The Union of Concerned Scientists quotes Catherine Hayhoe, saying you can't cut the roots and expect the tree to keep bearing fruit.
What tools would be at risk?
A lot of critical ones. NCAR co-developed the Weather Research and Forecasting Model, or WRF, used by the National Weather Service, the military, airlines, and utilities worldwide. The Guardian and Forbes note NCAR's GPS dropsons, those are probes dropped from aircraft into hurricanes, have improved track accuracy by up to 15% and boosted intensity forecasts even more. Colorado Public Radio has also highlighted NCAR's wind shear detection systems, which have helped virtually eliminate microburst-related airline crashes at major airports.
How does that translate to everyday safety?
Think about wildfire season. NCAR's models predict fire spread, smoke plumes, and dangerous downslope windstorms that drive explosive fire growth. The Santa Cruz Sentinel reports utilities like Xcel Energy used NCAR-derived forecasts this week to guide preemptive power shutoffs around Boulder, which faced extreme fire risk as this announcement landed. In a flood or hurricane, those same modeling systems guide evacuations and pre-position rescue teams. Losing them would slow and blunt responses.
What are states saying, especially out west?
California officials are sounding alarms. CalMatters reports Natural Resources Secretary Wade Crowfoot said this compounds recent federal cuts bearing down on the California-Nevada River Forecast Center, already straining the state as it braces for winter storms. The state climatologist Michael Anderson told the Santa Cruz Sentinel that losing NCAR's collaboration on precipitation and snowpack modeling will set the nation back in responding to extreme weather. And LAist covered Governor Gavin Newsom's office, calling NCAR's work life-saving as another atmospheric river targets the state.
There's also talk about politics behind this. What's that about?
The timing has raised eyebrows. 10 days ago, on December 11, President Trump issued a symbolic federal pardon for Tina Peters, a former Colorado County clerk convicted of state election crimes, and Governor Jared Polis said federal pardons don't apply to state offenses. On December 16, 5 days ago, the same day Vought targeted NCAR, the administration canceled $109 million in Colorado grants for rail safety, vehicle electrification, and hydrogen research. The Colorado Sun and USA Today confirmed those cuts, and Notice quoted a senior White House official saying, quote, "Maybe if Colorado had a governor who actually wanted to work with President Trump, his constituents would be better served," end quote.
Is that kind of retaliation new?
It fits a broader pattern in Colorado this year. The administration also moved U.S. Space Command from Colorado to Alabama in September, citing state voting policies, which the Washington Post framed as political punishment. Colorado's Attorney General Phil Weiser has sued the administration 47 times and 2 days ago told CBS News the NCAR breakup is, quote, "lawless and retaliatory," end quote. He filed a lawsuit on December 16 over the grant cancellations and says more legal action is coming.
Does NSF even have the authority to do this?
NSF does have broad authority under the 1950 Act that created it to initiate and support research and set priorities. But Representative Joe Negus told the Colorado Sun this appears to overstep federal acquisition regulation rules on running federally funded research centers. And UCAR's current 5-year cooperative agreement runs through 2028. Critics also say there's been no public vote by the National Science Board, which typically signs off on major facility changes. According to the Washington Post, the push seems to be coming from the White House Budget Office, not the science leadership.
What's Congress doing in response?
3 days ago, on December 18, Colorado Senators Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper put a hold on the Senate's minibus spending package. They want ironclad protections for NCAR's funding through fiscal years 2025 and 2026. Politico Pro and Grist report that the hold kept Congress from passing the package before the holiday recess, leaving the government on a continuing resolution until January 30, about 6 weeks from now.
Are they prepared to keep that hold into January?
They say they are. Bennett and Hickenlooper told the Washington Post they'd sustain the hold if that's what it takes to safeguard NCAR's core capabilities, even if it complicates negotiations after the new year. At a rally yesterday in Boulder, covered by Denver 7 and Colorado Politics, Hickenlooper called the plan a war on science. Representative Negus labeled it unlawful and said Congress has a duty to prevent the nation's weather safety net from being torn apart.
You mentioned protests. What are people on the ground saying?
The crowd outside the NOAA building in Boulder included scientists, students, and longtime staff. Denver 7 interviewed a former NCAR employee, Richard Friesen, who said the center's legacy is, quote, "renowned," end quote, and warned the breakup would be a generational setback. Rally organizer Nikki Kaiser from Longmont told the station, quote, "This is not a left or right-wing issue. We all need to know if a hurricane is coming," end quote. UCAR's Busalaki echoed that message, saying, as Boulder Reporting Lab relayed, that dismantling integrated teams will slow disaster response nationwide.
How would losing the supercomputer in planes change forecasting?
It would be immediate and painful. The NCAR Wyoming Supercomputing Center runs cutting-edge models that simulate wildfire spread, hurricane structure, and drought evolution at scales we can't achieve elsewhere. The Guardian quotes Kevin Trenberth, warning that divestment would cripple Western drought and wildfire modeling, while NPR reports Catherine Hayhoe fears the loss will hand an edge to foreign competitors. And those aircraft, the HIA-PER jet and the C-130, collect data you can't get any other way, especially over the oceans and in storm cores.
Any irony in the timing, given recent weather?
Quite a bit. As the announcement dropped, Boulder sat under extreme fire danger, and utilities were leaning on NCAR-informed models to reduce ignition risks from power lines. Meanwhile, California is prepping for another atmospheric river, with Stanford researchers explaining in Maven's notebook that these moisture-rich plumes are growing more erratic as the climate warms. California officials told the Santa Cruz Sentinel that federal cuts and the NCAR threat have delayed staging of swiftwater rescue teams ahead of the holidays.
How are federal agencies reacting?
It's complicated because NCAR isn't a federal agency. It's an NSF-sponsored center run by UCAR, but lots of federal offices rely on it. Maven's notebook highlighted parallel threats to NOAA's Environmental Modeling Center, which would worsen flood and atmospheric river predictions. PBS reported emergency managers are worried about a cascading effect where losing shared modeling platforms creates gaps no single agency can fill. As of today, NSF is still collecting feedback, but no formal rulemaking has begun.
Who's making the strongest scientific case against the breakup?
Even skeptics of climate policy are pushing back. Colorado State's Roger Pielke Jr. told the Colorado Sun that dispersing integrated teams will degrade forecasts, which should concern everyone from farmers to the Pentagon. Union of Concerned Scientists and The Guardian quoted Trenberth and Hayhoe, stressing that weather and climate experiments share code, data, and staff. Severing them breaks the engine. And CPR News pointed to aviation safety gains from NCAR's wind shear work as proof that long-term research delivers day-to-day protection.
What about legal options in the near term?
The Colorado Attorney General is exploring additional suits beyond the December 16 filing on grant cuts. He cited the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, which bars the executive from withholding congressionally appropriated funds without approval. On the NCAR restructuring itself, critics argue NSF must honor the existing agreement with UCAR through 2028, unless it can show cause and follow established FFRDC procedures. The Washington Post notes there's still no public vote by the National Science Board, which could become a key procedural fault line.
If the Senate standoff drags into late January, what happens to NCAR?
Short-term, NCAR keeps operating under current funding while the continuing resolution runs. The hold is meant to force language that fences off NCAR's core budget and protects the supercomputing and aircraft programs, at least through fiscal year 2026. Grist reports senators are seeking specific riders to bar asset divestment or transfer without congressional approval. If those protections make it into the final package, it would slow or block the breakup while legal challenges play out.
How are students and universities reacting?
With real worry about the talent pipeline. San Jose State's Craig Clements told the Santa Cruz Sentinel it's shocking and devastating for training the next generation of fire weather scientists. UCAR has warned, in statements to CU Boulder and Inside Climate News, that you can't quickly replicate NCAR's data holdings or its interdisciplinary teams, which took decades to build. NPR and the New York Times have framed it as a global signal that U.S. science infrastructure is politically vulnerable.
You mentioned no Federal Register notice yet. Why does that matter?
It signals how ad hoc this is. Big changes to federally sponsored research infrastructure typically involve public notices, board votes, and formal competitions for management. HPC Wire notes that as of today, there's no termination or recompete posting on sam.gov, which is where those contracts live in public view. The absence raises questions about whether normal safeguards are being sidestepped under pressure from the Office of Management and Budget.
What are the stakes if this goes forward?
In plain terms, slower, less accurate warnings during fast-moving disasters. Without NCAR's supercomputing capacity and aircraft data, hurricane tracks wobble, intensity forecasts slip, and wildfire behavior models lose fidelity. The Washington Post reports that even a few percentage points of lost accuracy can translate into thousands more people evacuating late or staying in harm's way. And in the West's evolving snow drought, Maven's notebook notes that misjudging snowpack can misallocate scarce water, hurting farms and cities.
Is there any compromise being discussed?
NSF has floated the idea of rescoping NCAR to focus only on short-term weather and space weather, but the scientific community says that's a false distinction. Union of Concerned Scientists points out that the physics linking a heat dome to grid failures or a moisture plume to flash flooding lives in the same models. Some lawmakers are discussing independent reviews or inspector general oversight to depoliticize decisions about national modeling assets. But the core message from researchers, as NPR and PBS relay, is simple: keep the integrated system intact.
Final thought, Chloe. What should listeners watch for next?
Watch for the Dear Colleague letter from NSF, which will show how narrowly they want to define weather work, and for any sudden moves to transfer the supercomputer or aircraft. Keep an eye on Senate negotiations after New Year's, especially any riders explicitly protecting NCAR through fiscal year 2026. And look for whether the National Science Board schedules a vote. According to the Washington Post, that would be a key test of whether this is a science-driven decision or a political directive.
Chloe, thanks for breaking that down. We'll keep tracking the funding fight and any NSF moves, especially with winter storms looming out west. Here are some other headlines. Russia says the peace talk train is pulling into the station, constructively, after high-level meetings in Miami over a U.S.-led 28-point framework to end nearly 4 years of war in Ukraine. Chief negotiator Kirill Dmitriev struck an upbeat chord, while Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky said diplomacy is moving, quite quickly. But don't deck the halls just yet. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov cautioned that a breakthrough before Christmas is unlikely and ruled out trilateral talks with Kyiv for now. And the fog of war refuses to lift. Amid the dialogue, a Russian missile strike on Odessa killed 8 civilians, underscoring how the battlefield keeps interrupting the bargaining table. In the West Bank, settlement news is breaking ground, and breaking with precedent. Israel's Security Cabinet approved 19 new Jewish settlements, including the return of Kadim and Ghanim, evacuated in 2005, bringing authorized additions over 3 years to a record 69. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called the move a strategic dam against a Palestinian state, reinforcing a policy critics label, creeping annexation. The math matters. Total settlements jump from 141 in 2022 to 210 today, nearly a 50% rise. The decision, taken December 11th and unsealed now, drew swift condemnation from the UN and Arab states, as Washington presses Israel toward a second phase of the Gaza ceasefire. In classrooms across America, the lesson plan has turned into a stress test. Educators report a climate of distress after ICE raids and the rollback of sensitive locations protections this year. One Chicago principal described an 8-year-old refusing to use his lunch code, fearing it could expose his family. North Carolina districts saw attendance crater. At one point, 45,000 students absent in a single day, as fear kept families home. A national survey found 70% of high school principals hearing students voice anxiety for relatives, safety, alongside enrollment dips and bullying spikes. With funding tied to daily attendance in states like California and Texas, schools are erecting safeguards, California's SB 307, and campus security perimeters, to keep learning from going missing. France is setting sail on a new flagship idea, nuclear-powered and decidedly Macron-powered. President Emmanuel Macron confirmed the launch of the Port-Avions de Nouvelle Génération, the carrier set to relieve the Charles de Gaulle by 2038. The specs are ship-shape and then some, about 78,000 tons, 310 meters long, room for 30 fighters, 2,000 sailors, and American EMALS catapults to fling jets skyward. Estimated cost, roughly €10.25 billion. Construction ramps around 2031, sea trials in 2035, full service by 2038. The move anchors France's strategic autonomy and rising defense outlays, targeting a €64 billion budget by 2027, keeping Paris one of only two capitals operating nuclear carriers. And at the White House, diplomacy is a family business reboot. President Trump is leaning on son-in-law Jared Kushner, an unpaid, unofficial advisor, to quarterback high-stakes talks. After helping broker October's Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal, Kushner has emerged as a lead fixer on Ukraine, including a 5-hour meeting with Vladimir Putin in Moscow, and shuttle engagements alongside Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Supporters tout his relationship diplomacy and Abraham Accords pedigree. Critics flag ethics concerns over his ongoing investment firm, bankrolled by foreign sovereign wealth. For now, the message is clear. When it comes to back channels, the Kush is still on the push. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with GPT-5, Gemini Pro 3, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.